Deontay in Alabama, he went to a shooting range.
He goes, I'm dreaming about a big steak.
For some reason, I got so pumped.
And this is going to sound hard to believe.
Yeah, Tyson Fury.
God, that was a great fight.
I've been fascinated by symbolism.
Deontay revealed so much.
You know, boxing,
Fox Sports and the PBC.
giving them control.
I compared it to religion.
What do you try to portray?
Errol Spence is a brand.
Something symbolic about it.
Boxing is just the platform. No politics. Deontay goes, I'm going to go scuba diving in my pool.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
I tell stories.
And real life. How's it going, Eric?
Hi, how are you?
I am doing very well, thank you. And first of all, I'd like to send my appreciation to your hoodie or a shirt that says "Sounds of Anarchy." It's one of my favorite shows.
You know what's great about this shirt? On the back, they went through the trouble of making up every single chapter of the Son of Anarchy.
Uh-huh.
So there's one that's in New Jersey. I think there's like 50 chapters. I'll show you really quickly.
Sure.
I'll stand up for you. But it's like it has all the chapters of the Suns. It's kind of amazing.
I know. I mean, especially because
licensed. Yeah.
The club is not existent, right? But they still have all of that.
They made it up. And I love the fact that they had a New Jersey one.
I know.
On some of the shows, they actually had some of the, like, I think that guy Happy came from another club. And
right.
That's funny. You like the show.
Remember the whole season from Ireland with the
I
Irish
liked
chapter?
the Ireland season. No one liked it. I liked it.
I liked it. They even changed the intro to be more Irish. Remember that? The intro song?
And they shot it differently too. The way that they shot it was, they shot it a little grayer and a little darker. I liked it. It's like no one likes The Wire on the season 2 of The Wire.
Yeah.
With the Greek guys and the
Polish guys
and the shipping. I love that season.
Well, you know the story behind that second season, right? Is that well, as far as I heard, and it's just like based on my memory, but after the first season, when everyone had realized like, oh, this is actually something really good here. We're having something really good here, and the actors, I guess, and their people realized that they sort of went on a strike, the main actors, and because of that, they just completely switched the story to this shipment docks with Polish people.
That's funny.
So then I guess they've been negotiating through the whole season, and you know they went back to their storyline. But that was But Sons of Anarchy was I was in second year of college, and that was the show that I was binging. Yeah. Well, not studying, and like I think failed one of my exams because I was just watching too much of Sons of Anarchy. But yeah, so
that's funny.
Eric Paulen, the way how I know about you, my friend Kuran Bhatia, who was also on my podcast, he texted me and he said, "Hey, I know this guy. He's a producer. He worked on the best documentaries before the fight camp videos, video series. You should talk to him. I think it'd be really cool for you to talk to him. He was a guest and you were a guest on his show as well." And I was like, "Yeah, absolutely. Like, let's do this." And I texted you.
Yeah, we worked together.
Yeah, so I was super excited, and I was before this show, before like we actually started recording, I was pacing behind my room. I usually pace before my podcast, just thinking about like what I want to talk about. But I put on the Wilder Fury 2 the series, and for some reason I got so pumped because you worked on that as well, correct?
Yeah. I was one of the producers of that show. I was the producer in New York. We have a producer in each camp who is with the fighters for 30 days. And then I kind of coordinate it all and get with the editors and kind of come up with the storylines based on what we're getting, and kind of shape the whole show with the editors, and then I write it. It's a great process. And especially when you have two guys like Fury and Wilder, Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder, who are so big physically and in grandeur. Their stature is just so amazing, and great big personalities. And that was as fun as you could have on a show like that. I mean, and the access was great. I mean, they were just wonderful. So.
So, and you've worked on several great projects. I've looked through your portfolio and through your resume. You've been involved with Manny Pacquiao and Mayweather, and you've done some previous Deontay Wilder. Can you just list some of those so that our viewers can actually like realize the whole importance of your personality as well and who you are as a professional?
from the boxing standpoint, I go back to one of the first things I ever worked on was a Sweet Pea Whitaker fight, and he was fighting. Oh God, what was his name? 1990. It was freezing cold. Aaron Davis. Aaron Davis was the champ, probably a little before your time. And his father was his trainer, and his nickname was the Tumbler. And he had fought too, and he did backflips. And we shot him in the ring doing backflips. He was in his 50s. Father could do backflips.
Oh wow.
So that was one of the first things I ever worked on. We went running with him about 6 a.m. up in the Poconos in the snow. It was beautiful. It was a beautiful, beautiful shots. And God, that's a long time ago. And we went to that fight. We wound up, my girlfriend, who's now my wife, and I sat with Jim Lampley after the fight.
Oh, cool.
Over the course of time, we did a lot of stuff. I worked for a company called Black Canyon Productions. We did a lot of stuff with HBO Sports, and I wound up doing a lot of boxing features. I wound up doing about 6 features in a row with Lennox Lewis, and I had a lot of fun with him over the years. And then we did Trinidad and De La Hoya, which wound up being a great fight. We did the Felix side for an early HBO countdown show, kind of before they do a half-hour show, promoting the fight before 24/7. And you'd go down and you'd spend 3 days, and we spent 3 days with Tito, and he was wonderful. God, that was a great fight. And this is, and then we did Holyfield and we did Holyfield and Lennox twice for 2 of the countdowns. When we go back, we did an early thing in the early 90s in 92 with Holyfield and Holmes, Evander Holyfield and Larry Holmes. Right. And we went out to Vegas the week of the fight, and we followed them around as much as possible. It was like an early foray into All Access that aired right before the fight. Jim Lampley voiced it. It was like a 7-minute piece, and we were in Holyfield's room, and Larry Holmes' room was a big suite with him playing the baby grand piano. And so I've been doing this a long, long time. And then we got into these, you mentioned Pacquiao Mayweather. I did the countdown shows for them. Right. We did 3 fights in a row with Floyd's company. And then I got back into boxing with Scott Boggins and Craig Genest in 5 films. And we're doing these shows for Fox Sports and the PBC. And God, I miss them right now. But we did a bunch of these countdown shows, and then we started this thing called Fight Camp. And for the first one, it was for the Mikey Garcia Errol Spence fight. And I went out to Riverside, California. I spent 30 days with Mikey and his crew. And Mikey was just wonderful. What a great subject. What a fun crew to work with. And the access was wonderful. His people were wonderful. He was wonderful. And from then on, I stayed back in New York. We just discussed it, and we were bringing in a couple new people. And these guys have been out in the field since. A guy named Jeff Newton and a woman named Lanny Levine, who have been with us for the whole run. And they've been our field producers, and I've been in New York. It was Thurman and Pacquiao was the second one. The third one was Errol Spence again with Sean Porter. And then we did Deontay Wilder and Luis Ortiz, and then we did Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury. So they've been amazing. I mean, really, really fun to work with, really great access. And at a certain point, the crews kind of become part of the whole camp. You're there for every day, and
people get comfortable around, around the crew.
And then the conversations become comfortable. And you see that in the second run with Errol Spence, and in the second run with Deontay Wilder, you had the same crews there. And it was so much more comfortable than the first time around.
Right. So I'd love to return to that, but before we're going to dive into the technicalities of that, I'd like to talk about you as well as to how did you start your career as a professional, and what drove you to sports, and whether you took any breaks from that, and how did it all start?
So I loved sports my whole life, and always thought that I would do something in sports. And I needed a class for going into my sophomore year at college, and I called my mom. And my mom, the two best pieces of advice she's ever given me is take a television production class.
Uh-huh.
And in high school, she told me to take a typing class
Oh,
and use it every single day. Every single day, with the computer,
of course.
you thank goodness for both things, because the television production class was wonderful. It was a theory class
Hmm.
and great professor, and it led me down my path. And at Rutgers College, where I went to, Rutgers University, you have to take an internship. It's part of the program. So I wound up getting an internship at CNN Sports,
Oh, that's pretty cool.
with a guy named Nick Charles, who was a huge proponent of boxing, who's passed away. But he was a wonderful influence on me. And Dan Patrick, who's gone on to do many things, Fred Hickman, Gary Miller, Terry Chick. These guys were like mentors to me. They taught me so much. I would stay after I was done. We'd finish the show at midnight, and I'd stay till 3 a.m. learning more. And it was just
Hmm.
I went down to Atlanta, and I worked at CNN Sports. They used to have a nightly sports show that
Hmm.
was, at the time, and this is going to sound hard to believe, it was a better show than Sports Center. It was a great half hour full of highlights and fun, and kind
Right.
of, and they competed against Sports Center. It was a wonderful, wonderful experience. And
And you
as
didn't go to
interns, we were
school.
really,
You didn't
I,
go to school for TV or
no, I
film,
did.
right?
No, I
You
did.
did. I thought you went to for like a journalism though.
Yeah, journalism and mass media. It
Got
was
it.
it
Okay.
was all under one roof. And at
Understood.
Rutgers, they had a lot of theory classes in television production, but there was one that was a lot of studio production, one that was like a field production course that was pretty neat, and then and then you wrote a thesis, which
Hmm.
was which I wrote on television sports as a religion. So it was I compared it to religion, and it's really not any different when you think about it. But yeah, so I did go to school for that, and then from CNN, I came home. My boss, who was a friend of mine named Jamie Morrison, who's still going at it pretty strong. I think he works for the Weather Channel now. He came up to New York and hired me as his intern in New York. And so I interned at CNN Sports with they used to do, in the afternoons, they'd have cut-ins, I guess twice an hour. They do 5 minutes. Debbie Segura did it, and Tom Kirkland. And Debbie Segura is married to Lou Dobbs from CNN
Hmm.
at the time. He's no longer, I think he's with Fox now. And so it was a wonderful experience. I mean, it was an amazing experience. I came out of school. I got a job at a place called Sports News Satellite, which was affiliated with Major League Baseball Productions. And it kind of went from there. And I met these two guys named George Roy and Steve Stern. And it was a very small production company, but I got to do things.
Hmm.
They sent me out the first week I was there to interview an old broadcaster named Ray Scott for HBO's Inside the NFL. Where are they now? And
Hmm.
it just kind of went from there, and it steamrolled. And at a small company, it was just George, Steve, and me. I could do everything, and I learned, and they trusted me. So I was a 22-year-old kid
Hmm.
traveling the country, interviewing guys like Dean Smith, Mike Krzyzewski, going to the Final Four. It was amazing. It was an amazing thing.
That
And
sounds
I
like a
was
dream
kind of
job.
thrown in, right. And I was kind of thrown into the fire. And, I was making $300 a week. I would have done it for nothing. Everybody says that, but I would have.
Hmm.
And it was amazing. And it just kind of grew from there.
So it's funny. So you said you worked on other different sports. So it was baseball and you said football as well, correct?
Yeah, I did. I mean, we never did anything really with the NFL. We did a
Hmm.
bunch of things. We did some baseball things. We did some stuff for the LA Dodgers. George and Steve at Black Canyon Productions got kind of famous because of they did the Dodgers film in 1988 when Kirk Gibson hit the home run, and that
Hmm.
that film won a bunch of awards. And they did the Dodgers history film 2 years later, and that kind of steamrolled into something called When It Was a Game, which
Mm-hmm.
was an HBO documentary, all done with home movies from the 30s, 40s, and 50s in baseball. So that was an amazing thing to work on. And the first 3 years that I was working there, we did these 3 shows, and it was incredible. So we did the NCAA basketball film from
Mm-hmm.
1990, the official historical film. We would go out to the Final Four and film that. That was a dream come true. I sat on the baseline for 15 years. I think I was at 16 Final Fours from 1990 to 2007, and I wasn't there in 2005. I missed one. And then they stopped doing them. It's sad. They don't do a really historical film anymore. But that was the best. I mean, I'd sit on the floor and interview the coaches and interview the players, and that was fun.
Absolutely. And once you got your first boxing gig, right, the first project related to boxing, did you find something different about the sport of boxing in comparison to like making movies or projects on different kinds of sports? And if yes, what differentiates it?
Well, boxing, I think that when you walk into a boxing gym for the first time, and for me, I was 22 years old, there is a feel, I'm thinking about it and I'm visualizing it in my mind. There's a smell. You see the people working out. There's a sound. It's it gets all your senses going. And you walk in, you're kind of looking around, and I still to this day, I can't believe how these guys can do the speed bag.
I tried it once.
Yeah,
it's not
Lennox Lewis taught me how to do it. One day he taught me how to do it. That was fun. But there's just something about it, and I mean, now with the high def cameras, it looks even better because you have the sweat coming off them, and when they have the slow mo stuff. But there was something about them. They're very intelligent in general. They're constantly thinking, and they're constantly and they're very good at articulating, and this is a generality, at articulating what they do and how they do it, which isn't an easy thing to do. And especially over the last year and a half, when I've gotten back into it, it's like they've I mean, they're brands now. They're not only Errol Spence talks about this all the time. You're not just a boxer, you're a brand. Errol Spence is a brand, and he needs to, take care of that at all times. And Sean Porter and Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury, and you see it now, and it's a much bigger, more encompassing, but still, when you walk into that gym, especially when you walk into a gym like Keith Thurman's gym in St. Pete, which is just an old school gym, it looks like it's 1950 in there. If it rains, you see the drippings from the ceiling because there's holes in the ceiling, and it's just very special. And as I'm thinking about it now, I'm imagining for 30 days we walked into Mikey Garcia's gym, his brother Robert's gym, every day. And every day it was neat. Every day it was cool. I loved it. Every day he trained at 4:00, and we'd get there at 3:30 and wait for him. And there's just something about it. There's just like, it's special. It's cool. It's special. And the fighters have been so welcoming. They've really welcomed us into these places, which is really, really nice. And then you build relationships with these guys. You become, throughout, I've been texting the guys. How are you guys? You holding up? Are you getting ready? You still training? When do they want to know what we know. Have you heard anything? Are we coming back soon? Are we? So, and you see it on Twitter. I'm sure you follow all the fighters on Twitter. They're dying to get back.
Of course, and who knows when we can go back, to see events or anything like that. But if anything, the fighters are, as far as I'm seeing, they need to stay ready, because you never know when the next fight is going to happen. Some say it's going to be in May. There's the whole UFC thing with Dana White. He really tries to push it, and I feel like it's going to create a really great precedent, if not just like some sort of a synergy between boxing and UFC at the same time. But yeah, Everyone is in anticipation. And it's funny, I'm watching you speak about it, and I see that you're a very visual person. You're visualizing a lot of things as you speak about it, which is very interesting to observe. And what I'm thinking, boxing, so you had a thesis, right? You said TV is a religion, and right now
Television sports.
television sports is a religion. And I feel like with that, you sort of adopted a philosophy that you've been following for a long time. And I'm just guessing here, and I'll ask you to elaborate on that. But I feel like, what can you say about that? And obviously, like, it's changing. The TV industry is changing with internet and YouTube and all of that. But I've been fascinated by symbolism, when I watch your work and I see something symbolic about it, and maybe I can learn more about it right now. Like, what do you try to portray, and how do you use your philosophy?
Yeah. I think that what we're trying to do, and when people ask me what I do, I say I'm a television producer. They go, what does that mean? I go, I tell stories. That's what I like to say. And you can't do it alone. You don't do it without great management with Scott and Craig, and you don't do it without great field producers and great cameramen. And with Nick Rourke and Britt Berzosa have been shooting these now for the last 4 runs. And you put it all together. But what I want to do, in my mind, I have great editors too. I have Eric Barchi and Jonathan Nanberg, who take everything that comes in. It's like a jigsaw puzzle, and you take all this stuff and you cull from here and you cull from there and you cull from, and you go back here and you grab something, and they put it all together, and they're just brilliant. And I think what we try to do at Five Films is, like, we are trying to tell the stories, give you some insight into who these people are. Boxing is just the platform. It's the platform. Right. We're trying to tell these human interest stories. And even when they're in the gym and they're working out and the sweat's flying all over the place, and you have these beautiful visuals and they're put together so well by our editors, what happens is you're learning about them. You're learning who they are, what they are. And in a perfect world, and I don't think anybody did this better than in our run so far, Deontay and Sean Porter were the two best at setting up an arc that over the course of the 4 episodes, or with Deontay 8 episodes, you really learn something new about them each and every time. Sean goes with Kenny. Sean, his father Kenny, they're kind of a combination. And in episode 3 of the Sean Porter story versus Errol Spence, Kenny got on him. It's an unbelievable scene. It's about 6 minutes long, 5-6 minutes long, and it's intense. But at the end of it, Kenny looks at him and goes, "Are you with me?" And Sean says, "Always." And in the next episode, we talked about, Sean says, "It wouldn't work any other way. But I wouldn't be as good a fighter with another trainer. My dad pushes me, and he knows he can push me, and he knows how far he can push me." And to me, that was just a great opening up the curtain so you could see what these guys are really like, what their relationship is really like. And that showed up with those 2 guys, with Kenny and Sean Porter, and with Deontay, because Deontay revealed so much with us. And a simple little scene with his aunt, just at his house, his aunt cooked dinner for him.
Right.
And with Joey and Chris, his brothers, they call each other brothers. They spent so much time together, and they're as close as brothers. And it's wonderful to see, and it's wonderful that they open their lives, because it's not easy to do this for 30 days. It's not easy from our standpoint. It's not easy from their standpoint. And when they do that, it kind of all comes together, and we're telling their stories. That's what we're trying to do, and give you some insight into their mindset, some insight into who they are. That's what we're trying to do.
And so you mentioned that Deontay and Sean, they really sort of give you that arc, right? And I'll tell you what, on the screen it looks so beautifully and just perfect, like it's you actually following a movie, right? It's beautiful story. But also I understand, I truly believe that it's a tremendous labor, right? It's so difficult to actually make sure that it all comes together as just one beautiful painting. And so to what extent, you said that they were very helpful in that, but how do they to what, like, do you have to sort of navigate them and tell them, hey, this is what I'm trying to show, what can you offer me from your personal life, from your story, and then those boxers were like, oh, I know exactly what you guys need to do, like, let's go to my aunt's place, for example, you know, I'm being super technical here, but like, is that something that you have to really, really work on with the fighter when you really try to let them understand what you're trying to do?
I think that they know what we're trying to do. They've really all been through it for the most part. Some not on the level of a crew being with them for 30 days.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, these shows have now been around since the mid 2000s, you know. So when the big fights come up, they know there's going to be an all access show that they're going to have to deal with. So they know we're going to be there. They know they're going to have to tell their story. And in the perfect world, we are flies on the wall. We are not interfering with their schedules. We're not telling them to go do something. We are there and we're following them along. And some guys are better than others. You know, Deontay, the first time, it was a trust. You know, you have to build that trust up. And as it got better, you know, as Jeff and he forged a relationship over week 1, week 2, it got better in week 3 and week 4. And you know, and after they see the shows, then they go, oh, I get what you're doing too. So after the first week, they see the show and they're like, I get it. I understand it.
Right.
And Sean was just really, really open. I mean, and not saying that the other guys weren't, because Keith was great and Errol was great. And Luis Ortiz was wonderful. He was wonderful. So they understand it. They, you know, we always say to them, if you need a day off from us, if this is a lot, because 30 days, you know, 20 of which we're shooting, we're going to be around for 30 days. It's a lot. Just tell us. And they have. There have been the guys who have told us that, guys, I need a day. I just need a day. I need to work. I need to focus. No cameras, nothing. And we've done that. And we give them the day off and we come back. Usually it's a Friday. They'll, you know, and give me Friday, take the weekend, and we'll be back on Monday. Luis Ortiz did that. And it was fine. It was great. And came back Monday, reinvigorated. Relationship was fine. Everything was good. And so they understand what we're doing. And, you know, our questions are pointed. They're very pointed. So
right.
We know we go in there with a plan. It doesn't always, you know, like, for example, Deontay says to Jeff one day, hey, I'm going to watch Joey. Joey's his one of his strength and fitness trainer. He goes, Joey was a track star in college, and he trains Olympic guys trying to be Olympic athletes. So they went to watch Joey's training, and it wound up being a nice, poignant story about their relationship. Of course, everybody wanted a selfie with Deontay, you know, when they saw him sitting there, and all the athletes came up to him. But that's just something that happens organically. You know, I'm going down there. In the first episode with Deontay goes, I'm going to go scuba diving in my pool. Come along. I mean,
that was funny. I did not expect that one. Yeah,
it was amazing.
It was great.
It was like, like
straight up from like a Van Damme movie or something. Remember, like under the swimming pool kind of thing.
Yeah. And he came out in that outfit, and it's like, I remember looking at the footage and then the underwater footage. Oh my God! I mean, the guys called me when they finished. They go, "Oh my God, you're not going to believe this stuff when you see it."
I was wondering, like, whether it was his idea or he was basically
his idea.
Yeah, so that's
his idea.
Incredible.
His idea. We are not pushing the guys to do anything that they wouldn't do. You know, they have a fight to worry about,
right? And
we want to be a fly on their wall.
They don't have time for
They're going to work out twice a day. They're going to do their strength and conditioning workout. They're going to do their boxing workouts. And then you just hope that they let you go to their house and meet their wives and cook dinner, or they go to the massage therapist or whatever they're doing. They, you know, like great example was Luis Ortiz had a cheat day and he went to this Cuban restaurant in Las Vegas, and he had a big steak after 3 episodes of him eating, you know, broccoli that he hated. And he goes, I'm dreaming about a big steak. And then finally, he went and had a steak on one of his days off. So that's like the perfect world. That's like,
Right.
That's how the stories really come together.
Speaking about the stories, I'm just thinking, what really separates the stories about athletes such as boxers or UFC fighters, MMA fighters, is that in comparison to team sports, you really have this protagonist-centric story where it's one man against the other, and the whole world is against you, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that's what makes you like, it's kind of like very archetypical, and it makes you associate yourself with this fighter. You see how this fighter works so hard to overcome all his difficulties, and he is basically an everyman, and he's given this opportunity, and he tries to get this chance, and that's sort of an emotion that I'm getting from when I'm watching projects, when I'm watching your films. I don't know. I don't know, to what extent are you thinking about those emotions that the viewer can experience, and what emotions are you trying to tap into when you're doing a movie like this?
Yeah, I've talked to Aaron Cohen. He writes our opens. The wonderful writer. He came from HBO, and I'm sure you've seen his work. He writes our opens. He writes our final close at the end of the show, and we always talk about the only other person in the world who can understand what you're going through is the other fighter. So I'm always thinking that. I'm always thinking about, okay, here's Deontay in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, working his butt off, and Tyson is the only other person in the world, the only other one, who understands exactly what he's going through, because he's doing the same thing in Las Vegas. And it's an interesting dichotomy, so I'm always thinking about that relationship. I'm always thinking about, and when Aaron and I talk at the beginning of these things, and we get each other's ideas, and when his final script comes through for the opens and the closes, I'm always blown away by, how he's taken what I've thought in my head and what he thinks in his head, and does his research, and I do my research, and it kind of all comes together. But it's always like, this mano a mano, and by the time we get to, for Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder, everything that they do, everything from they started about January 1st, really, both of them, to February 22nd. And of course, they're training a little bit before, but they go into their full camps January 1st, maybe a little late for because of the holidays. But I mean, they're in camp for 8 weeks, 9 weeks, 10 weeks, whatever it is. But the only other person who understands that, and the only other person who has February 22nd circled on the calendars, is the opponent.
Right.
And you're right. Even they have their camps around them. They have their trainers and their nutritionists and their strength and conditioning coaches, and they're all there to help them. But the mindset, when you get in that ring, it's just you, and it's just him, and it's face to face, mano a mano, and it's an amazing thing. And you try to tell the stories as best as you can in a different way, but ultimately it's just, one guy versus the other guy, and you hope that you get that magic, and boxing usually winds up delivering that.
Absolutely. And two things I really liked about several segments with Deontay Wilder. There was one where he's actually said it straight to the camera. He's like, listen, I know like this is all entertainment or boxing, but I'm like, sometimes I'm getting tired. Like, this is very, very hard. And I really like when you that you included that the boxer says, like, listen, it's hard, okay? Like, and I'm just a human being, and so just basically being real talk with us, the audience, really helps. And also, like, another segment that I like, the fact that a boxer is demotivated, but he still kind of goes up there and does his thing. It's not the cliche ones like, oh, if you're struggling, you still go for it. It's mostly like, tell me the truth that you're a human being and sometimes you're lazy. And I like that aspect of that. And one thing in particular I also liked, and I wonder what's your opinion on that, is there was a segment where Deontay in Alabama, he went to a shooting range, to a gun range. And I was like, I'm seeing like, well, it doesn't look like he does it often. It kind of seemed like he did it maybe like it's one of his first times or something like that. But at the same time, I'm thinking like, okay, like then why does he do it? And you say that you guys are not kind of making them do it. So I'm thinking, is he probably trying to tap, because he's from Alabama, and Alabama is very gun centric, pro gun or whatever. And so I'm thinking, is he trying to tap into that segment of the population to watch his fights to show that he's into guns as well? So that's, if we're
No,
putting on the executive hat and trying to like market the fight, do you think that was the part of it as well?
no. And Mikey Garcia did the same thing. And what both of them said about it was it's just something to get their heads away from the total focus of February 22nd or March 17th for Mikey. It's like you can't live this 24/7. You can't. You have to get it out of your mind. Whether it's whether you're swimming or whether you're running or whether you're in the gym, and it's all you're thinking about for 60 days, 90 days. You have to do other things, and that's what that was. I mean, no politics, no nothing. Both of them talked to Mikey spoke to me directly about it because I was out there, and he spoke to Jeff about it. But I want to go back to something you said about Deontay saying how tired he was. I remember Jeff calling me right afterwards. He says, God, he was so human. It was so real. It was so
Yeah.
it was a Monday morning, and he had been traveling, doing some promotion for the fight, and he came in. He said, I don't want to do this right now, but I'm the champion of the world, and no one's going to push me to do it, and nobody's going to make me do it, but I have to do this so I can be ready on February 22nd. And I remember Jeff saying exactly what you said. He said it was such a human moment. And Jeff hears it in, when Deontay says to him right away, oh man, I don't want to be here this morning. And Deontay said it right on camera and then pushed himself through the workout. And that's the stuff. That's really when you get that human element that when Tyson's with his brothers and they're just sitting at the table and they're messing around and I mean, that's the stuff that makes things special, those little small moments. And I mean, the montages are great and they look beautiful, but it's those things that really humanize the fighters that we're proud that we get those moments. And they come along with trust. They do. They come along, when you're working with Deontay we worked with Deontay really for 4 months in a row, basically, because we did the Ortiz fight with him. Jeff and Nick, the cameraman, and Matt, who's the assistant cameraman, went to the Vatican with, which you saw in the first episode. They traveled to Italy to meet the Pope and to do some other things in Italy, which was just
I was so
amazing.
surprised
And
that happened.
That literally, that's Jeff Newton just working through the night with Shelly Finkel, making things happen, and Shelly Finkel calling Deontay and saying, hey, do you mind if these guys come? And Deontay said, absolutely. And that's about trust. And that's about relationships that Jeff built with Deontay and his crew. And that's as important as anything we do, building the relationships. It's
Tell me about it. How do you establish
those
that trust and those relationships with fighters, especially the new ones that you don't know?
Yeah. So what we do is myself and the field producer get on the phone with the fighter or the fighter's person, depends on the crew. Each guy's different. Some guys get on the phone with you, some guys don't. And you try to meet with them when you first get down there. So you have a call with them. You try and meet with them when you first get down there. And you just say, here's what we'd like to do. What would you like to do? Here's what we're trying to convey. Now,
giving them control.
Yeah, and we've done 5 of these now. We've done 5 of the fight camps, and we've done 35 hours worth of, not 35 hours, but 35 shows. I was in the middle of Jamal James and Thomas Delorme, which we finished the show, but we're going to have to go back and fix it when that fight happens, which was supposed to be April 11th. So that was the 35th show. We were in production for the 36th show. And one of the guys, they literally started to film. They filmed with one of the guys, and then the other guy, and I don't remember who it was exposed to somebody with COVID,
Oh,
and he
wow.
went into quarantine for 14 days. So he never shot with the second guy. They were
Right.
young up and comers. The PBC was promoting for an FS1 show. So yeah, I mean, it's just about so they know who we are at this point. We've been doing this for 18 months. The fighters know us. The guys that we go back to, like I said, I mean, I've been texting Jermel Charlo. Hey, how you
Nice.
doing? Jamal James crew, I've been texting with Thomas Delorme. Those guys, Tomas Delorme and Jamal James literally were in training camp away from home. So Jamal James went up in Minnesota. He went about 2 hours north, and Tomas Delorme moved from LA to where Coachella is. I'm blanking on the name right now, but where Joel Diaz, the Diaz brothers are, and he went and rented an apartment and lived up there. And Jamal James literally lives in the gym. They literally live in the gym that they work out at, so he can be focused. They get up at 4:30 in the morning, run in the snow and the 18-degree weather, and so these guys had given, they changed their whole lives and sacrificed everything, and they're in the middle, and they were still, they don't know what's going on. They just don't, they don't know when they're coming back. They're in the middle of training for an April 11th fight, and there's something scientific about their approach. They go in for 8 weeks, and you taper it down at the end, and it changes everything. This has changed. I mean, it's changed everything for everybday.
But here's what I'm curious about is that it's one thing to invite the crew and follow you around and just film yourself, right? But also what I'm seeing, how boxers are opening up, right? And obviously behind the scenes, someone behind the actual camera lens, there's someone sitting there asking them those questions, and the boxers are trusting you enough to actually really open up, basically to a stranger who you no longer view as a stranger, because somehow you trust this person to actually go deep. And those are the things where you're tapping into that emotion where I'm like, oh, like I'm actually looking into his soul, like, and that's what make me root for him, make me cheer for him. So those are like, how do you do this?
Well, I'm going to tell you a story that Jeff told me. The first week that they filmed with Deontay Wilder, they asked Jeff to just ride along with them in the car, and they asked not to have the camera in the car, which happens. It's a lot. They had been traveling. They traveled to Birmingham to get the scuba equipment, which is in the show, and so they said, I think it was Chris Bates and Deontay, and they just asked Jeff about his history as a television producer, and Jeff comes from 60 Minutes. And has spent time in Afghanistan and overseas and producing war. I mean,
he's seen some stuff.
Jeff said that 60-minute conversation, not on camera, was as important as anything that he shot with them, because it gave Jeff credibility with them. They got to know who Jeff was. I mean, Jeff knows who they are, at least from research, there's no research on Jeff Newton for the most part. So when he told them stories about, and Jeff has great war stories, I mean, being shot at and, watching with these, he said that the camera lens was so big and so, it was so amazing that it was better than binoculars. I mean, the camera lens could see further than the binoculars could see. So that Jeff said that 60 minutes of riding with Deontay and talking about that stuff, like, that's how you establish it. Mikey invited me up to his house the night before we started filming, and we talked and I was with my cameraman Britt Brazosa, and Britt said, "Hey, Mikey, you got a Dodge Challenger? Can I see it? It's all souped up." And Mikey, and that's in the first show or the second show, I don't remember. Mikey changed it to a Dodge Champion, and he literally had Dodge come, like little moments like that where we went and saw the cars and we were BSing about this and and he had the guns out, and we started talking about the guns, and that's how that came about. And, you have commonalities. He has kids. I have, like, you find some kind of commonality, and you hope that you hit it off. It doesn't always work that way. Errol Spence is a great guy, but he's very private. He's very private. Like, we had some nice scenes with him and the kids, but Errol Spence's life is about that gym, and he does not give you as much access as the other guys, and it's fine. This is what he does. He plays video games, and he boxes. That's what he does. And yeah.
You go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. I mean, and that's but Sean Porter will let you film anything. It's just the way. It's just the way that they are. It's just the way. And we're very cognizant of how hard it is too. So I mean, we are not with them. We're not with them from the time they wake up until the time they go to sleep. We're not. It would be an impossibility for us. It would be an impossibility for them. So you've got to take the access that they give you and do the best you can with that. And I think we do a pretty good job of it. I hope we do.
Yes, and I was just thinking like about Errol Spence. If knowing him, how do you think he's feeling right now? Because he had that accident, the car accident. He needs to come back to the ring, and having worked with him, like, do you think to what extent he's actually, preparing himself? Can you share anything about what you know about him to speculate on how he trains right now, and whether he's taking it twice as seriously, or what kind of approach he's taking?
Yeah, I mean, I've spoken to Derek James. I've seen him a couple times because I did some stuff with Jermell Charlo. So I saw Derek out at the Wilder Fury fight. Derek is his trainer, and I think the answer is yes. I think the answer is I hope it's. It's amazing about that morning. I woke up that morning and he had something on Instagram about his pit bulls, and I literally took my phone out. When I wake up, it's a normal. It's a normal morning. I think my daughter goes to school at 7 a.m. on normal mornings, and I help get her ready. She's a senior in high school, and get her out of the house. But I woke up, I looked on Instagram that morning, and he had something about pit bulls, that he had pit bulls, and I didn't know that. And I said, I wrote myself a note. Great. Let's get Errol with the pit bulls for next time,
Oh, nice. You're taking notes. That's a cool insight.
And that was the morning that, I put all my notes on my phone. I write. When I'm doing the shows, I have these pads, and I have a pad here, and I have pads here, and I have pads and pads and pads.
But it's a great insight, like that you're constantly working.
I get up in the morning. I'm constantly thinking about things because I know that we're gonna work with Errol Spence again. I know we're gonna work with Deontay Wilder again. I have every story written about Deontay Wilder. Not every, but I mean anyone that I saw. Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury. I emailed them all to myself, and I have a file on my work email that when we start the project, I will go back to, and I will read everyone and make notes. And who knows what I'll get out of those? All the things that happened the last time. But so that's what I was thinking that morning. And then when I heard the news, and when you see the video of that crash, and you see him flying out of the car, and it's a miracle. It is a miracle, and thank God that he's alive. And I met Errol once, and so polite and so respectful. I love Derek James. I think Derek James is one of the classiest guys in this business, and I think yes, I think he's going to learn his lesson from it, and I think he will. I think he will. I don't know if he's going to train twice as hard because that's kind of cliche, but I think that he will get his mindset right and learn a valuable lesson from the fact, because I think that if his body wasn't thrown from the car, I don't think he would have survived that crash. I mean, the car was turning, and it's scary. It's really scary when you see that video.
Absolutely. I going back to the Luis Ortiz and Deontay Wilder. I in particular paid attention to that film because Luis Ortiz is not an English speaker, and I've had an opportunity to work as an interpreter. I'm a Russian speaker with some of the fighters that speak Russian, and I understand how hard it is for a production crew or for
Yeah.
press or for interviewers
Yeah.
to work with people who don't speak the language. Um, what kind of insight can you share about that? Maybe some strategies, or to what extent that was a difficulty for you guys, and how did you go around that difficulty of working with someone who does not speak English?
Yeah. So it automatically adds 2 layers to our production. We have to have an interpreter in the field, and we have to have an interpreter back in the office to translate for us.
For
So
subtitles.
for subtitles, right? And it's harder and it takes more time, and
Hmm.
you always kind of it makes it harder for us. It does.
Hmm.
So it's something that you know you immediately have to think about. You immediately have to um, you immediately have to plan for it. But
Hmm.
with Luis, um, what was great about him from the minute that we started with him, and we did not speak to him on the phone. Lanny did meet with them the day before they started training, and you immediately saw in him that there's this gleam in his eye, and he's funny and he's engaging, and it all came across, even though he didn't speak the language, and sometimes it doesn't. With him, it did, and we had our translators out in the field, um, and it's helpful. And back in the office, we have a translator who literally spends the beginning of the morning as the footage comes in. Here's what he talked about. We don't do long interviews. We only do
Hmm.
the one long interview at the beginning. That's for Curran's countdown show that he does, and then we're doing a lot of just fill-in work. We do
Hmm.
5-minute interviews, 10-minute interviews as the scenes are happening. That's the style that we do. There's not a lot of long sit downs. I think the longest one we've ever done is Deontay sat and talked the first day for like
Hmm.
25 minutes. They just got on a roll. Um, but the longest one of those I've ever done was like I did. Tony Harrison got on a roll. It's like 18 minutes long, and it was all good stuff. And his son came in the middle of it, but
Hmm.
you just try and keep it to a minimum. You got to turn these around fast. Something that
Right.
we haven't talked about. We're turning these around. Sometimes the next morning, we'll shoot a scene at night in Las Vegas, and we get the footage overnight. The editor comes in, and by 2 o'clock, he's got a scene cut. That's amazing. I mean, that I marvel at it, and I'm part of it. And I'm like, God, how did we do that? We have 3 minutes cut. They shot it at 11 o'clock in
It's
Las Vegas
impressive.
last night,
Yes.
right? And we're turning this stuff around, and that's the thing. We're not a big crew. We're not a big crew of people. There's 6 people who are out in the field for us, and there's 15 people total in the office, um, and there's really 2 people in the edit room, the editor and the producer, and I bounce back and forth between the 2 of them and kind of look at. I mean, so it's like there's not that many people,
Hmm.
so um, it's pretty amazing that how quickly we turn these around, and we know what we're getting into. But
Hmm.
it becomes part of your landscape, and it becomes part of all right, you gotta think that over the course of the 5 days that we have to put this together, each side's got to come up with about 11 minutes
Hmm.
of content, and winds up being about 9.5, 10 minutes by the time you do an open and a close, and
So
that's the most daunting task,
got
that
it.
that that time frame. and
Hmm.
and when you're with somebody who lets you shoot a lot, like a Sean, and you're shooting, Sean, at times we'd have 3 4 things happen in a day, and there was stuff that we just couldn't even get to because there's so much of it that we have to pick the best of the best,
Hmm.
and and you don't get a chance to go through everything. You just don't. It's impossible.
Right. And you know, the reason I'm also always asking, like right now I ask you about the interpretation stuff as well, is that I feel like I just had a podcast yesterday with the Ukrainian guy in Russian. We talked for an hour and a half, which is incredible when you're talking to a professional boxer, you know, and he wants to tell you his life story. And it's just such a great stuff. And I will definitely post that in Russian for the Russian media to see, for the Russian viewer to see, or Ukrainian. But I also want to show, and it's a 17-0 boxer, 17 knockouts, WBC Intercontinental Champion, but you know, I feel like how can I want to subtitle the whole thing, and maybe I want to dub myself speaking in English, you know, asking those questions. But I also understand that, you know, the viewers, they don't want to read subtitles for an hour and a half. And I'm
It's
trying to
hard.
come up with the ways, like, how can I grab their attention? Maybe like break this down by several parts or something like that. But yeah, those are the things that I'm like all of a sudden
Yeah.
realizing. Yeah, how to make sure that it's
Yeah.
interesting for the viewer.
So when we did and we did for at the beginning of the year we did your Dennis Ugas versus Mike Dallas, and it was a half-hour show, and your Dennis was going to be the Ugas was going to be the main focus of the show. So it was going to be weighted more towards him.
Hmm.
And Scott Boggins came to us. He's the executive producer, the owner of the company, and he said, "What do you guys think of doing
Hmm.
a voice, a voice of Ugas, so to speak, to
Mm.
instead because
Voiceover.
I think a voiceover, right, a
Hmm.
Spanish, an interpretation of what he was saying, and we did it
Hmm. Hmm.
because." I mean, it would have been of the 22 minutes, 15 minutes would have been because he was wonderful and he told his story all in the first person, and the interview was great. It was just so well told, from everything that he grew up with in Cuba to where he is now, and it was very important that we told that story because he
Hmm.
did it so well in the first person. So that's what we did. We used a voiceover. We used somebody, he'd start talking. HBO always did it like that. They always did.
Hmm.
We just chose to do the subtitles. I think it's fine in short spurts.
Hmm.
But like you said, even reading 15 minutes worth of subtitle, it's a lot. It's a lot
Hmm.
it's asking the viewer to engage in something that they're not usually asked to do. And
Hmm.
you can lose your focus. It's just
Yeah,
another, you want to
exactly.
keep that constant attention. So
Hmm.
yeah, maybe you want to break it up into pieces. That might help. Or
Yeah.
or you dub in a voice.
Yeah, that would be funny. But yeah, I surely, you know, starting to realize how hard it is to make sure.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like the theme of my show. Well, not like the overall, but like I always ask about foreign fighters. You know, when I speak with professionals, I speak a lot about marketing and how do you market a fighter,
Yeah.
especially if he's coming from abroad. Like I feel like language is definitely at least 50% of the marketing success is where a fighter speaks the language. It makes things much easier.
Yeah.
And which
Yeah.
made Tyson Fury, Deontay Wilder production, you know, the whole atmosphere, the whole promotion, so much more colorful, you know, because not only Deontay Wilder provided so much great content and so much great personality, but also all of a sudden you have this guy from Great Britain coming over and basically taking over the whole show.
Yeah.
To what extent
Yeah.
did you have an opportunity to sort of interact with him and work, or whether, or was it like a part of another team who worked with him? What can you tell about him?
With Tyson,
Yeah, Tyson Fury.
I was not out in Las Vegas. Lanny Levine was out in Las Vegas with his team,
Hmm.
and we do these shows for the PBC and Fox. Now,
Hmm.
Tyson, you know how hard this is to get two organizations together. Tyson was signed with Top Rank and
Top rank.
ESPN,
Hmm.
so it was just to get the deal made. Just to get the deal made with Bob Arum and Al was hard. It was
Hmm.
hard, and they
Hmm.
did it. And then we kind of come along with it, and they were wonderful. We spoke to people. We spoke to the people at Top Rank first,
Hmm.
and then we started speaking to his camp, and they were wonderful. They did say right away that no one was coming into the gym to
Hmm.
watch us train, and they kept to that. Uh, it was a little hard for us, and obviously it showed in what happened on February 22nd. But
Mm-hmm.
that was the hardest thing for us with Tyson, that nobody was allowed in the gym, but he didn't let any crews in the gym. He didn't let anybody. So we got a lot of personal moments with him and a lot of fun moments with him
Mm-hmm.
at home, back at the house, or just out on a run, or he'd let us do his strength and conditioning workouts, which were crazy. They were hard. And we had one of those in each of the shows, and they were good. They were intense, and it kind of made up for the fact that we didn't have anything in the gym. Because that's where Deontay shines, in the gym. I mean, when you're watching him hit the bag, and you're seeing that bag, and you're hearing that heavy bag, and he's hitting the mitts, and he's breaking the mitts,
Mm-hmm.
kind of
Yeah, that was
amazing.
it was a very effective footage, especially with the bodysuit and all.
Yeah,
With his
yeah.
coach, it was
And
pretty cool.
and he had literally broken Jay's rib, which is incredible.
Oh my God.
So yeah, I mean, with the bodysuit. So but Tyson gave us a lot more personal moments back at the house, playing pool with his guys on a Friday night.
Mm-hmm.
And how competitive, you saw how competitive he was in a
Right.
simple pool game. Again, these are the things that were special. When I went out to Las Vegas to film the night of the fight, and I had never met any of them, they were all very classy. They were all very respectful, and I thanked them for all, their access, and they were fun to work with. They were really fun. It was an interesting crew of people. It was, and everything that he said came to fruition. It was kind of amazing. It was
Yeah, that
just,
was crazy.
it was like, and I guess he just didn't want to show anything in the gym that was going to come out that night. And,
Mm-hmm.
you thought maybe this guy, his plan, it's like it was like a mad scientist, and it just all kind of just came together, and everything, fit together perfectly for him that night. And that one was, we knew, because of it was going to be on Fox, it was going to be on ESPN, it was Top Rank, it was PBC, and to get everyone together, that one, had a little bit more of a magnifying glass on it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really, it was a lot for us to kind of digest at first, but ultimately we just kind of did the same thing that we always do. And like I said, I hope we do it well. I think we do it well. And it was cool. It was really cool because it was everywhere. It was, as I walked into the arena on the weigh-in day, Friday, they were playing our episodes. They played all 4 episodes for the fans.
Right.
And everybody was just kind of looking up, and it was on 3 different screens. It was on the scoreboard. It was on 2 big screens, and it was being filtered through the arena. It was really neat. It was really, as a matter of fact, I called everyone in the office, and I took video and I showed it to them. I called our voiceover guy to tell him, I said, your voice is coming through. It was just neat, to see it on this 40-foot screen in the middle
Mm-hmm.
of the arena. It was great.
Was any of the footage from that promotion, was it used in the Super Bowl commercial for the fight? Any of the footage?
No,
Okay.
they do that. They did that separately.
Got it.
They did that stuff separately, and they ran that all over the place, and that's great. And I love that stuff. But that's done. I think that's done very early on,
Mm-hmm.
and we come in about 4 to 5 weeks from the time of the fight, and then we usually leave the week that they leave for the fight. So
Mm-hmm.
that's just the way that it works out. But no, we weren't privy to any of that, and it's great. It always looks great. They're fun. Those commercials are fun. And for the Super Bowl, I think it was on 6 to 8 times or something like that.
Yeah,
which was great.
It was a lot of slots we're taking for that game. But yeah, Eric, we're coming up to an hour of our conversation, and I feel like you've contributed so much to my podcast just by sharing your experience, and I just really want to thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you, Azizi. It's really, this was fun. I always thought, like you were pacing. Believe me, I was nervous all day thinking about it too, and it seems like it's been 5 minutes. So.
I so appreciate that you said that, and I'm hoping we can maybe stay in touch, and in the future we can record something else as well.
Anytime. I'd love to do this again.
It's a great pleasure. Thank you so much, Eric. Thank you.
Thank you so much.